Hey, thanks for tuning in to Around the World in 80 Oysters, a global live show that explores oyster appreciation, cuisine, and culture from around the world. I'm Julie Chu from In a Half Shell, an oyster blogger, oyster addict, oyster sommelier, and right now I am sitting at home in New York City, not be able to go anywhere. So the show is all about bringing you the experts about oysters from all over the place. And today, my special guest is Gus Chu, who is the owner of Open Oyster, an amazing oyster bar in Hong Kong. So I've been to Open Oyster many, many years ago, and Hong Kong has just been one of those places where I just have found so many varieties of oysters. Like it's impossible to find so many varieties from different countries in another city. So I'm really excited to talk to Gus, and I'm bringing him on right now. So, hey Gus, good morning.
Hello. Good morning. Good evening.
Yeah. It's always funny with the time difference, but how are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm
Very
fine.
good.
I'm absolutely delighted to be part of it. I'm honored.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. You know, I've been always a fan of Open Oyster and what you do.
Thank
Um,
you.
but before I always forget this, so before we start, if anybody who's watching, who's hanging on live, and if you have a question for Gus, make sure to just type it in the comments section, either on Facebook or YouTube, and it'll show up on my screen. And if we have time, and if there are questions, please ask questions. I will bring them on, and we'll sort it out. And if not, then or if you ask later, then I'll try and get Gus to answer them on Facebook later. Okay. All right. So let's just start, from the beginning. Like tell me a little
Mm.
bit more about yourself and how you ended up opening Open Oyster.
Well, I guess I'm a natural born oyster lover. So I fell in love with oyster right after my very first one, which is very lousy, flabby and bland in a buffet table. But I enjoyed the experience. But afterwards,
And where was that? That was
that
in
was a buffet. That was a
Ah.
quite a lousy buffet back in the, I think it's early 80s.
Okay.
But I enjoy that experience.
Got it.
So afterwards, well, to cut a long story short, so in the mid 90s, I quit my job as a flight attendant. I opened up a pub of my own because alcohol is also my major interest in life. So it was a huge success, and it's been popular for quite a long while until the year 2008. If you remember the global economic downturn,
Mm-hmm.
wow, the economy was totally destroyed, and I lost everything. So that was the time that I need to restart and we to have a new business, which is more we which needs to be more sustainable. So I just naturally combined my two major interests, oyster and wine, together, and open up my humble little shop, Open Oyster. That was the
That's
year
great.
2009,
Yeah.
and well, 10 years gone by.
Yeah, that
Pretty good.
probably went by really fast. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
At the time in 2009, what was the oyster scene like in Hong Kong?
The oyster scene is well, it's not that we don't have too many oyster bars. Maybe roughly talking about 8 or 7 of them.
Okay.
And well, as an absolute beginner going into the market, I came up with this tricky little bundle sales technique called wine lovers discount.
Mm.
So I have one regular price on the right side, which is pretty much the same as everybody else, and then I am offering 30% off for all oyster
Right.
for people who spend to for customer who buy 2 glasses of wine per head at my establishment.
I think
So
I have your
mm,
menu here, right?
oh, thank you. That is
Yeah,
the latest one.
that's
Yeah.
amazing.
So that was quite an instant. I don't call it success, but it helped me break into the market. So within 1 year, we are part of the major league.
Very cool. So, when I'm now looking at this menu and I just remember encountering so many oysters, like just so many countries that I didn't even know produced oysters. Here, is that, why Why do you have so many, first of all? Is it
Oh,
because to
yeah.
match like your wine list?
Mhm.
Like what made you think you wanted to bring so many oysters into the
Well, I just came up with a theory called the Wimbledon effect. I doubt whether you heard of it.
No.
It's a uh, in UK doesn't have to produce its local hero or local champion in order to make it to make the event successful. That is that pretty much the scene in Hong Kong.
Hmm.
We are we are happy because we don't have any local oysters. So all the others oyster that we have we we that has to be imported. So there
Hmm.
is no bias. So all oysters are imported. Just imagine if we have our local oysters. So most people will be focusing on the local oyster. They are fresh. They're they're cheaper, and then nobody will be trying any oysters from any other countries. But
Right.
since we don't have our we have our local oysters, but nobody eat them because of the water pollution. So so the only way we get oysters are through imports.
I see. Wait, so you said that there are local oysters, but nobody eats them.
Yeah,
Is
and
it?
we have you heard of it? We even have our local species. It's called
Mm.
the Chrysostria Hong Kong genesis.
Oh, I I thought I saw that in Wikipedia one day, and I thought
Oh,
that was just like
mm,
a not a. I don't
oh,
know what to think. Wow,
but
that's
but but
interesting.
but you look at it, it's pretty much the same as a Pacific
I
oysters.
see. I
But
see.
it's a shame that because we have heavy metal or industrial pollution
Sure.
coming in from the other side of the harbor,
Yeah.
so nobody eats them raw.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Now I just
Mm.
pulled up this photo, which I love, which is the front of your store, right? I think
Oh
of this
yeah,
and I look at it and it looks like the Oyster UN because you have all of these flags and you see so many great varieties. This must really draw people in, right? I do you
yeah. It's a cheesemonger inspired display.
I love it. Now, I guess I know that the population of Hong Kong is actually very diverse. It's being an international business center. Do you feel like is there a difference between like oyster love between like the local Hong Kong citizens versus the expats, or is everybody kind of pretty much the same on the same page with oysters?
I think people are pretty much on the same page in oysters because we are an international hub, and most of the customers are very advanced, affluent, and sophisticated type. So the the behavior and spending, everything is pretty much a global thing.
Mm-hmm.
No particularly trend that I noticed.
Is there so do people have any favorite oysters? Do they feel like one country has better oysters than the other?
Oh, according to my observation, the Chinese has a palate for oyster which has a hint of sweetness. I mean
Okay.
those that has been refined, affinage in France in the
Yeah.
clairs, and recently the Irish oysters are doing very well because they always have
Really?
yeah, they are rich in glycogen, and then uh, it they have a very strong sweet linger afterwards, which
Oh,
is
that's
very
great.
popular among the locals.
What about the size of oyster? Do people prefer the big oysters versus smaller ones?
Uh, the Chinese are a little bit towards bigger size,
Okay.
hmm
Here's the
and pretty diverse.
there's some other photos that you sent me which looks amazing. Like one of the I mean that seems like a typical platter that you would serve at your restaurant, right? There's
Yeah,
what is do you know remember what this oyster is where it's compared to the size of your hand?
that must be that might be an Arosa, as the Spanish one. Some of the larger size
Ah,
maybe this big.
wow. And what about this dish here? What is that?
You mean the one on top?
Yeah.
Right. Oh, that is my favorite dish at home. The
Ooh,
baby oyster omelet. Have
baby
you tried this?
oysters.
Have you ever
No.
tried this when you travel east? Oh, that is my favorite. Of course, I don't serve it in the restaurant. It's hard to
Okay.
change people's perception because
Wait,
this is some sort of street food,
can
and
but you can find it in Hong Kong
oh yes,
street
it's a
food
street
carts.
food. Street food. It's some baby oyster harvested in, I guess, in the
Ooh.
place called Cham Gong in China.
Okay. Oh, so those are locally grown um
Chinese. I
Chinese.
think they are imported from China, mainland
Okay.
China.
And why are they baby oysters? They're just
I
how
think
big are they?
no, I don't really study why they do it, but now I think most of them they farm the oyster in a cluster, not like the so when
Okay.
they harvest the big ones, they when they find out that there are some smaller ones
Uh-huh.
clinging on, they just whack it open and take the small oyster, baby oyster meat, and serve them.
Interesting. Now, speaking of so in addition to the baby oyster omelet, which now is on my bucket
Mm.
list,
Oh,
is
you should try. Strongly recommend.
I really want to have it now. It reminds me of the um an oyster hang fry or
Oh, you hang
hangtail
town fry.
fry that I
No,
had
that's the same
in
thing.
yeah, okay. I've had that. It felt really
Mm.
like hangover food
Does
the way
does
that
your
they cooked
recipe
it.
have bacon with the
Mhm.
hang with your hang town fry?
Yeah.
I think if you ever come across this baby oyster recipe in Hong Kong or in China, you don't need the bacon anymore.
Okay. Does is oysters a big like do they have a big part in Cantonese cuisine beyond this dish?
Oh yes. Now, the baby oyster has two major dish. The other one is called the baby oyster congee, which
Ooh,
is also good. Those are all street food.
sure.
Yeah,
It
I have tried to talk to my chef about having local baby oyster farm to table
mhm.
uh, in Hong Kong, but
Uh-huh.
I think it's pretty hard to change the perception of people. So we better not do it. Let
Oh,
the
really?
street food be street food.
Well, is that's interesting because I feel like I personally love street food because it's always so
Oh,
tasty.
yes.
Is there I mean, I guess is there just like a separation between, are raw oysters more like fine dining
Mm.
versus a street food? And I guess you
And
wouldn't see them together?
yeah, and and it doesn't go well with wine. And then,
Oh. Oh.
have you ever tried the blood cockles?
Yeah, like
Blood
blood clams?
cockles. Uh,
Maybe.
the small ones.
But they're red,
Also,
right?
yes, blood
Yeah.
cockles.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
also my favorite.
Yes, they're very good. They're very good.
Oh, does
Yeah.
anybody sell them in the U.S.?
Not that I know of. They look a little too scary, I think, for
Oh,
Americans, but I had them in Mexico when I was in Baja.
no.
So there was a lot of shellfish. They had blood clams. They had this clam called the La Chocolata, and
Uh,
it
uh,
tasted like it didn't taste like pure chocolate, but it
uh,
had this really nice truffly taste that was so good. Um, I have never seen it in the U.S. actually, but
it's
just haven't heard.
marketable.
Yeah, it is. Maybe one day. Um, so tell me like more about. I want to bring this menu up again because I find this so
Mm.
fascinating. How do I do this? Stop screen, share screen. Okay. So going back to this menu, okay. So can you tell me like how? I guess looking down this list, actually, most of the species are the Pacific gigas, right?
Uh, yes, you are
Yes.
right.
But
You
you
are right.
can get native Europeans
Uh,
and Kumamotos.
we have except the Bellon. The rest are all Crossostria gigas.
Got it. And how many countries have you purchased oysters from? Do you remember?
Uh, Roughly 10 countries. Sometimes you have things coming in off the menu. Like recently, we are having Scottish,
Right.
which is UK. Oh, yes,
Yep.
and we are going to have some Japanese, but not available right now because of
Okay.
the economical situation.
Hmm. I see.
Mhm.
How and then so I'm really curious about how you discover these oysters. Like, is it that your go-to distributors just decide to open up new relationships, or do the oyster producers reach out to you? Like, how does that work?
Oh, it's a fun question. So I'm very happy that once in a while there will always be oyster farmer showing up at Open Oyster.
Cool.
So well, they thought I'm doing very huge business, and actually I don't have the volume, but I have a close friend which is also my mentor. He is doing distribution business. So whenever the oyster farmer comes, I will introduce him to Alan, the guy who I just mentioned,
Okay.
and then a lot of business were done that way.
I see.
Mhm.
I see. Do local Hong Kongese buy oysters from grocery stores? Is that popular? Do they
Uh,
shuck at home?
Recently, yes, becoming more and more popular, which is not
Okay.
good for me.
Really? I'm sure they'll appreciate the hard work it takes to shuck an oyster, so they'll rather
Oh
just go to you
yeah,
after.
they I'm quite sure they will come back to me
Yeah, for sure. Do you have
with a
a
wounded hand.
yeah?
That's
You
not
see
a
like
good
a
job.
bandage
Sorry.
around hands, like okay, I'm back. Now, so I know you love your wines and you're passionate about that. Do you have a favorite wine and oyster pairing?
Oh well, to me, the best would be for oyster pairing will be any brand is fine. The champagne with no dosage. That means no added
Mm.
sugar.
Yep.
Those kind of champagne is the best for cleansing your palate,
Mm.
and with the strong acidity, especially when you're tasting so many different variety of oysters, like being in open oyster, that is the best choice.
I
Other
see.
than that, the classic pairing will always be is always safe. The Chablis, the Muscadet. Muscadet is also always safe.
Sure. What would you say is the most adventurous, exciting pairing you've tried?
Mm, sparkling Shiraz with
Oh, sure.
Bellon.
Ooh, yeah, that sounds
It
good.
it sounds. I mean, before you try it, you you think it's going to be horrible, but I had that experience. Okay.
Like it's not bad. Okay,
Yeah.
so actually, thank you guys. We have so many questions for you.
Oh, really? Oh, that's
Yeah.
good.
So I'm gonna just go down this list. Oh, here's one from Mike. Hi, Mike. Thanks for tuning in. Do you have any favorite
Right.
American grown oysters?
Oh, yes. Well, we sell a lot of. Personally, I like Eastern oysters. So, but in Hong Kong, too, it's a shame we don't have too many choices. In U.S. grown oysters, my favorite is the TIV. We call it Totten Inlet Virginica,
Oh, sure.
which is
Amazing.
the eastern ones grown in Taylor Shellfish Farm.
Yeah.
That is my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one for sure. Very cool. I think this is funny from Ashley. Do people order those huge ones?
Oh yes,
Is
a lot of them they do. They do. Um,
but not as like
well,
a
uh,
dare, right? People actually will want to eat them.
yeah. Well, a lot of people think that those oysters would be tasteless, flabby, and bland, but
Mm.
no, they taste very, very good. But the thing is that, well, you it's a little bit strange that you have to open
Oh
cut
yeah,
open the oyster and finish them bit by bit. Other than that, that's a hurdle. That's the only hurdle. Other than that, the whole thing tastes very good.
very cool. I remember having one. I think the last one when you had to actually cut it up, I had it in Bangkok in an oyster bar there because it was just massive and you cannot put that whole thing in your mouth.
I have a lot of fans. Sometimes they call in advance to check if we have that jumbo ones.
Oh, fantastic. Another question from Ashley is how big and how old are the baby oysters that you're talking about?
Um, it's this big, like maybe I think less than an inch. Uh, how old? I don't know because I seldom have a chance to talk to those local oyster farmers. I would say they are 6 months old. Just a wild guess.
Okay, interesting. Another question from Mike. Are most of what you serve cooked or raw?
90% raw. Ninety
Got it.
percent raw. But once in a while, we have customers asking for the traditional ones like Rockefeller, Kilpatrick. We still serve them.
The locals ask for them, or do the expats?
Uh, uh, Mostly the Chinese,
Okay.
the older generations.
Okay.
Some of them they avoid eating raw food.
Okay. Interesting. So one another final fun one from Susan. How many oysters has one person eaten at your restaurant?
Oh,
Guess the most. Do you have a record?
we didn't really count. We didn't really count. I would guess, but less than 100. Less than 100.
Okay.
Maybe you should ask the guy that I just mentioned, Alan, who's my major distributor. He won the Hong Kong oyster slurping champion back in the the
Oh.
late 90s.
Oh wow.
If if you have time, you should try asking him to go on chat.
Yeah, I
He's
would
a
love that.
long-winded guy,
Oh,
like
I love
like me.
anybody who likes oysters and wants to talk about them. I would love that. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. So I think I have one last question for you before we sign off is if you can travel anywhere, one place, anywhere around the world to have their local oysters, where would you want to go first?
Oh yeah, I think you would guess. It's New York. I told you earlier before we start, because I'm an Eastern Oyster fan, and we only have two choices there in Hong Kong to
Yeah.
get the Virginia, the Malpac from Canada, the TIV, and the so-called Blue Point, which is not
Mm-hmm.
really Blue Point.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, I am planning one day I should come to the East Coast with a tour guide like you. You can show me around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
We will do.
so I can taste all the different Virginicas
Yep.
all the way down south, Louisiana.
Yep. Yep.
That would be fun.
Yeah, keep me posted. I'd love to show you around. Go to some oyster farms too.
Yeah,
That would
great.
be
That
fun.
would be great.
Well, cool. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your
Thank
morning to
you.
chat.
Thank
This
you.
was
I'm
fun.
absolutely delighted here to be
Very
part of it.
cool.
It's a great idea.
Thank you. And, I hope to return. In the meantime, everybody, if you want to follow Open Oyster HKG on Facebook, if you will, in the future have plans to go, it's a true destination for oyster lovers in Hong Kong. So do that. And yeah, thanks so much, Gus. Hope you stay safe, be well.
You too. You too.
Okay, bye. Awesome. So that was Gus from Open Oysters. Thank you so much for asking so many awesome questions. Quick note for all of you who are now craving oysters, which I'm sure you are. If you want to go and buy oysters to come directly to your door, if you're in the US anyway, I have a database on my site. It's just on that URL, oyster.guru/shop. It has a whole list of all the oyster farms that are selling direct. Please support them. They are, just trying to get by during this time when they can't sell to restaurants right now. And also, make sure to check out the rest of the full schedule at oyster.guru/live. If you like today's episode, please heart it, please like it, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow the Facebook page, and I will be posting next week's schedule this weekend and probably right after I interview Mark Irwin, who's going to be talking about New Zealand oyster culture. So that's it for now. See you later.